of the entire year. So with that doesn't mean we're not learning any things after the SOL. After the SOL, we have a project. It's going to be more your own age you grew up. So you were born in 98, 99. All right, so it'll start probably from 2000 on. All right, you'll get to kind of show your own individuality in that aspect. And today is just wrapping up the end of the year. All right, so from last class, what presidents had NATO action in Yugoslavia? Bill Clinton. What president built up our nation's army and defense? Reagan. All right, what president was president during the fall of the Soviet Union? When the actual Berlin Wall fell? George Bush. And then September 11th? George W. Bush. All right, so we talked about the presidents and stuff. Now we're talking about kind of a widespread, information about modern America. All right, and how times have changed. Okay, so changes to the Supreme Court. All right. The U.S. Supreme Court has changed. It now includes women and minorities, such as Sandra Day O'Connor, all right, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Clarence Thomas. Has anyone seen this lady on TV for anything funny? It's not just Judy. No one's seen anything about her? She's, I feel for the lady. She's 84, but she's been filmed a couple times recently.
Sorry for falling
asleep during things. I'm like, she's so old. She's 84. All right. So Clarence Thomas is the second African American Supreme Court justice. Who is the first?
Thurgood Marshall.
Thurgood Marshall. All right. So now that we have women and minorities, all right, what did a usual Supreme Court justice look like for the longest time?
White men.
It was white men. All right. So what had to happen for these guys to get on the Supreme Court? Let's start with just women. What actually had to happen for them to even? Women's suffrage movement. All right, what amendment was that? When women got the right to vote. And then we just talked about the Civil Rights Movement. What was the two big changes that were put in the 60s?
The Voting Act of 1960.
Civil Rights Act. All right, and then the Voting Rights Act. All right, so that is some of the things that have changed. The Supreme Court has changed from what it was like for first 200 years. All right, and then we've had our individual liberties expanded. This is modern America, and throughout history we've had individual liberties expanded as well. So the Civil Rights Movement, what was our last unit, expanded rights through the 40s, 50s, 60s. That provided a model for equal justice. All right, so we think 40s. Let's go back to the Civil Rights Movement. What happened after World War II? Harry Truman put this in for the Civil Rights Movement. It was like kind of started it. What? That, he did that, but not the Civil Rights Movement. Okay, so were troops integrated in World War II? No. So what does that have to do with what I'm asking? Troops were desegregated. Okay, that's 40s. 50s. Think about certain things. What happened in 1954? It's a court case.
Brown
Board of Education. Schools are desegregated, but it took a long time for that to happen. And that, amongst a lot of other things that were going on. 60s. You guys already said it. 1964 was Civil Rights Act. 1965 was Voting Rights Act. All right. So with those laws, all right, and then with Brown versus Board of Education, the Supreme Court comes into play, all right, that protects the individual rights given in the Constitution of the United States. What happened last year? That was a big Supreme Court case, 2015. Expanded civil rights to a group of people. Gay marriage. Yeah. That was last year.
What was
Yeah, it was like right when school got out. So the U.S. Supreme Court identifies a constitutional basis for a right to privacy that is protected from government interference. right? Due to September 11th, certain things have been added. It was a big act that is allowed, the government's allowed to look into things that they might not have been able to look into before. Patriot Act. Okay. So basically this is just a follow-up on, the end of the year with certain things that the Supreme Court does. All right, a new change as well, rising immigration. All right, so we have had multiple kind of waves of immigration in our country's history. The first one was at the beginning, all right, when everybody started coming over to the New World from the Old World. When was the second big wave of immigration? Yeah, early 20th century, progressive era, a lot of people coming over to Ellis Island, all right, and now is another big wave. The reasons why people come here are kind of the same, all right, political freedom, economic opportunity, but if you think back, to the original colonies, what was one reason that's not up there? Religious freedom, yeah. And that might still be a reason people come today, but the two big reasons are political freedom and economic opportunity. Another difference is the countries that people are primarily coming from are Asian countries or Latin American countries, where before it was a lot of Eastern European and other places like that. All right, so there's a few issues that are related to immigration policy with a large number of people coming over. Could be positive, could be negative, could be indifferent. But there's a strain on government services, all right? When a large amount of people come over, documented or not, in the last, a couple years ago, it was 38 million in a year, all right? That's a lot of people. And, no government, our country's huge, is prepared to take in 38 million people all the time. So that is a strain on government services. There's also, these immigrants fill low-paying jobs in the United States. There's border issues. This is an issue that has been talked about a lot in the election coming up. What's going to happen with that? Other issues that immigrants might have to go through, a pathway to citizenship. Do you know what you have to do to become a U.S. citizen? Do you just become a U.S. citizen?
You have to take a test.
Do you take a test? What's the test like?
You have to know all the presidents, all the states, all the important ones.
You have to, it's hard. It's not
It's really hard.
you have to study for it, and it's not like you just do that. You had to do other things too. Didn't you have to live?
7 years.
You have to live in the United States for a long time. You have to have certain documents. You have to prove that you are, you can't commit a lot of crimes or any crimes. You can't do any of that. So yeah, the test is hard. You have to study for this test. It's not something that you're just gonna go in and pass. I mean, people like myself who have, well, I would know because I'm a history teacher, but who've been born here, their entire lives, a lot of people might not be able to pass it. It's hard. So it's not like you just become a citizen. There's a pathway and it takes a while.
What was your grade?
I'm taking it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What was your grade? I don't know if it's like an A or B thing, you might pass or not pass. Bilingual education. Has anybody taken or gone to any bilingual education schools when you were younger? ESL every year? Yeah, so this is a newer thing, all right? And a lot of parents are, when they have kids, are putting their children into bilingual education schools where you learn maybe Spanish and English at the same time or whatever else the language is, which is actually, a kind of cool thing. A lot of other people that come from other countries know how to speak multiple different languages. Like my grandpa speaks 6. I'm like, how do you even get that in your head? But it's a newer thing that's coming out now. And then just increasing cultural diversity. I mean, this area in itself has changed, has had a lot of immigrants come in and just, there's a lot more diversity in schools, which is a good thing. All right, so contributions of immigrants. All right, diversity in music, arts, literature. All right, the role in the labor force. And then there's a lot more scientists, engineers, doctors, all right? Why do you think people come to the United States to become doctors, scientists, engineers? Why would you go to school over here?
Some money back.
Huh?
They can like make money
More
and
money.
send it back home.
Or send it back home. More money sent back home. Are the schools here good schools? Yeah. Yeah, so that's, a lot of doctors. Actually, there was a study recently that there's probably more doctors coming from other countries and doing their, doctorate stuff here than people that were born in America. And then scientists, engineers, Google. Google has founders that were not born in America, that are immigrants. So there's a lot of contributions of immigrants. All right, technology. This is like the thing that blows my mind. So you guys all have your cell phones all the time, 24/7. Miss Roundsley can tell you this too, because I went to high school where she was teaching. So when I was in high school, you all have your phones, they're all on your desk. I'm not that much older. I'm older than you, but I'm not like so much older than you. My phone was only green screen, it was black. The only game you had was the snake game where you I don't even remember what it was, you hit like a brick. It was like the most boring game of all time. I don't remember what it was.
Oh, you couldn't hit like the other part of your
Yeah, that was all of it. Text was insane. You were like, oh, I got a text message. But you were like, you can't text anymore. It's 10 cents a text. You couldn't, have that. So the internet was not on your phone. So I remember my senior year, I started I was texting. It was okay to text. You could get unlimited texting. And I remember being in math class and I was texting under my chair. And then it's just funny that it's just been 10 years, but everything's changed. Everybody has phones, internet. You can just look up anything. You have the phones in schools to look up things. It's just so different from when I was in high school. So huge advances in technology. All right. One of the biggest, besides internet and things like that, was the space program. All right. Who came up with the space program? What president? Kennedy. All right. He said we want to get a man on the moon within the decade. All right. Well, who was the one who was the president? That's what president that pushed for the space program. Okay. So this happened in a decade. What he said was going to happen happened. He did not live to see it, but that was one of the biggest things. All right. So he in the 60s pledged to increase support for the space program, and there was a race to the moon that was going on in all of 1960s. So it was kind of the space race. We're in the Cold War. The Russians put up a satellite first, and then we had to keep running against them. So a few people that you need to know. John Glenn was the first American to orbit the Earth. And then Neil Armstrong was the first person to step on the moon's surface. And he said that famous quote, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." And Sally Ride was the first female astronaut in the United States. So there's been a lot of amazing things to go into that have happened in space. Satellites. We can, there's so much stuff we still need to explore. But there's been a lot of disasters. Have you heard about the big disaster in the 80s?
But the teachers?
There were some teachers on there. Yeah. That's
It's like the teacher of the year, right?
Challenger. So it was something that everybody was watching. We talked about big events that everybody remembers. For me, it was September 11th. For parents, it could be JFK's assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination. But for that little generation before me and my parents, the Challenger was something everybody was watching. We were watching it on live TV, and my dad was a science teacher. He actually applied to do that. He didn't get picked, but I was like, thank God, I wouldn't be here. But they had astronauts and they had some teachers, and it was one of the ones they put out to the public to get trained and stuff like that, and people were watching it, and it blew up on live TV. Everybody's dead. So that was a big shocker to a lot of people. And then, all right, last Zach. Hello, Zach. Last greatest technological advancements. So we had space. All right, so cable TV. This is something that will differentiate, our age groups as well, even though I'm not that far above you yet. Cable TV was not a thing, really, when I was in high school. I think we got cable in high school, which some people still might not have cable. Now people are moving away from cable and just doing the internet stuff, streaming. But you know, it was like a treat for me to go to my grandparents because they had cable to watch Nickelodeon or Disney. That was like a treat. Nick at Night was like all I loved it. So cable TV, it's very new. All right, so you just had a few channels before. You had channel here. You had 4, 5, 7, 9, 20, 50. You didn't have a lot of channels. And 24-hour news like CNN. All right, that was not a thing either. You had 1-hour news, or depending on where you live, the news is on at 6 o'clock, or the news is on at 9 or 11. There's a few times a day, but you don't like if there's breaking news, like something's going on right now. You would have never known that. You would have to wait till the news. There wasn't internet, so it's not like it would be posted on the internet. It was just different. That's changed a lot in the last 20, 30 years. Personal computers. Who has a laptop?
Really?
I didn't get a laptop until I was in college because I needed it. This was one of the first computers right here. Is that a personal looking computer? I don't even know what this is. I don't even understand what this does. It's just like, but yeah, that's a computer. So you're not going to be chugging that, taking that along with you. Personal computers. Instead of having a big, another thing that changes my, age difference from you guys. When my mom was an elementary school teacher, so when schools got new computers, they would sometimes say, you can take one home. So we had the new Macs, which were purple, pink, blue.
Orange.
They were like pretty big, but they were like this big at the size of the desk. So we took home a computer, and it was for the internet, and I would play a few games, like math games, and I was like, I'm so lucky. Like, I have this computer. I have so much time on my hands. I just wanted to play the games, but it was, looking back, I was like, why would I ever do that? Like, that was just not a fun game to play. Cell phones. To me, that's the biggest thing, because it connects people where you would have to, when the internet was out. So with these kind of phones, all right, this would be your phone. You dial up. So if you guys in high school, boyfriend, girlfriend calls you, you have to talk in front of everybody because you can't go to your room and you're like in the kitchen and people are there. Like, okay, go away, stop talking. And of course you'd have your parents on the line. You'd have your parents on the line, and I'm not kidding you, like I would hear my mom breathing. And I was like, can you get, it was so embarrassing to say that. Can you get the phone? But, now the phones have internet, you can, contact people all over the world quickly. Before, payphones, you guys ever see that anymore? There's not a lot of payphones. It's just so loud. Payphones are not really around that much. They have them more in Europe now, or still not so much around here. Sometimes in big cities they do. The internet changes everything, all right? Now you can shop online. Now you can set up, anything you can think of in the world online. People meet each other online. That's like a new big thing. So I'm going to show you one of the first cell phone commercials. And this was, exactly what the first cell phone my dad had looked like. It's a mobile phone, but then it can go into a cell phone.
Getting a car phone is not for them, whatever the reason. Haven't kept up with the booming industry of cellular radio telephones. Seems like this are becoming commonplace in U.S. cities where cellular is available today. This revolution in communications could make it possible for more and more people to have a phone in their car, or even one that travels with you. Like this unique cellular portable made by Motorola, which weighs only 30 ounces. Right now, businessmen and women are major users of radio telephones where cellular is in service. But more people will take advantage of cellular as its benefits become apparent. Eventually, seeing people using cellular phones may seem as commonplace as someone checking time on an electronic watch, figuring out an electronic calculator, or programming on an electronic computer. Industry watchers say there are only a few thousand cellular phones in use right now. But that number is expected to grow considerably within the next few years during the cellular revolution.
Alright, so that looked like an easy phone to carry around.
Well, then they are big around, let them hear the good. being a computer user comes with these.
The high seas
Look at this.
are a leisurely lunch. Radio Shack keeps you in constant communication with their affordable, transportable cellular telephone. Hello? Oh yes, he's right here. It's for you.
Yes? I heard about the merger. 500 shares.
The affordable, transportable cellular telephone. Only at Radio Shack.
Doesn't
Can
that
you
kid
imagine
like?
texting? Well, there wasn't, but like carrying that around. So cell phones have become so small now that, I mean, you can't even, you know, the screens are so small, but I'm thinking even kind of bigger now. They're kind of going back to the bigger ones. All right, so almost done. The last changes in work, school, healthcare changes in the last, 30, 40 years. Telecommuting. All right, with the easy access to cell phones, you don't always have to work, at your work. Most jobs, a lot of jobs you do, like I'm not gonna be like, okay guys, I'll, talk to you at home, we'll Skype in to teach, and people are saying that might be the next thing, which I don't agree. I hope that's not what happens. Distance learning, all right, that is online schools, all right. I've taken online classes in college. You probably will too. You don't always have to be in the classroom. Everything's up there on the the World Wide Web. Breakthroughs in medical research, all right, including polio vaccine. That was huge, right? A lot of people who are your grandparents, probably older, have a polio scar from their vaccine when that first started coming out. Polio is something that affected a lot of people. So if you don't know what that is, it's a disease that can make you paralyzed, right? What president did we talk about had that? FDR. So he was never filmed, standing up at the end of his presidency and the end of his life because he was paralyzed, and it's not like everybody knew that, right? So medical advancements, I mean, just across the board, a lot of the big diseases, cancer, AIDS, I mean, they're not automatically a death sentence anymore, and that's what they were, all right? There's been a lot of medical advancements. All right, and then outsourcing and offshoring. So those are two things that basically companies, big companies in the United States send, work overseas because people will work for cheaper and they make more money that way, the companies do. So offshoring is basically having companies in other countries, so you don't have to pay a lot of taxes,